Okay, you are. You're recording.
It's a little confusing. Why are we having this event? I was really inspired when I saw that this film was, first of all, was nominated for multiple awards, including most recently this year, the Best Short Documentary Film for the Academy Awards, and was really seeming to garner some attention that had been coming out in other media as well around the issue of older adults' rights and their rights to self-determination, and an issue that comes up around that called guardianship. So I'm not sure how many of you are very specifically interested in that topic, but that is going to be something we're going to learn about today and talk with among our panel of experts. So I hope we will all learn something. I just want to get started by just understanding who's in the room. So who here is a healthcare provider, either physician or nurse practitioner? Okay, I see one hand. All right, a nice distribution here. Who here is in the law field or a lawyer? Also a nice distribution of 3 people, but welcome. Obviously, this is a huge legal issue, so thank you for coming. Social workers or people in social services? Wonderful. I think more of your colleagues are coming, I've been told. Other social services or people who work with the elderly. Okay. We all, many of us do, but we also have other professional roles. Who's in research here at the university? Okay, wonderful. And who did I miss? Anybody want to shout out a identity or profession? We're also going to just take stock of who's here from the general public. Registered nurse. Okay, you're healthcare. So wonderful. What's that? Communications. Wonderful. And who's here just out of general interest? Oh, yes? Education. Okay, so we have somebody here from the general public. Thank you. So I just want to briefly introduce the film. Obviously, no spoiler alerts here, but I just thought it was, when I saw it, it's very brief, as you'll see, so it's easily digestible in the time we have today. But it's really sort of a beautiful and rare look at the lives of a much older couple. Edith and Eddie are in their mid-90s when they get married, and when we're seeing them filmed. And then it's also, I would say, an even rarer look at a really tense and difficult situation that they're going through with struggles around who gets to decide for Edith, who's been diagnosed with dementia. And she has a formal guardian who legally has the right to make decisions for her. So we see this really sort of remarkable and I think difficult scene towards the second, third, that I hope we can all pay attention to, where some of the issues around her own self-determination about what she's going to do next really comes to the forefront and causes a lot of distress for everybody. But I think for me, this film, it's clear that this is a very complicated situation and it raises a lot of questions. So I'm hoping those are questions that you can make a note of as you're having questions watching the film, and that we can talk about as an audience and as a panel when we come together at the end of the film. So at the end, we're going to get together. We're going to fill these wonderful chairs here with experts. So our experts today are Sarah Hooper, who's a lawyer here in the city and runs the medical legal practice for seniors, among many other positions that she has, and as an expert in elder law. And I will let her say more about her role when she comes up to the panel. We also have Tony Chicotel, who's also a lawyer and an advocate for older adults and an expert in guardianship, who works at the California Association for Nursing Home Reform and does a lot of advocacy in this area. We also have Jill Nielsen, who's a licensed clinical social worker and the Deputy Director of our Department of Aging and Adult Services, which has a really key role for our most vulnerable residents here in San Francisco County who need this type of help with a guardian decision maker. So we have the people who are on the front lines. I will try my best not to talk too much myself, but I see this clinically as a geriatrician. And I do also just want to briefly thank, of course, our filmmaker who's going to be here and is going to be available. And by here, I mean here, her head is going to be enormous and floating and available for questions. So she's going to be zooming in here with us. and which is a really special treat and a really wonderful opportunity for us to talk to the person who was there with Edith and Eddie when this was all going on. And of course, want to thank the people who sponsored this event and help us get the word out, the San Francisco Health Network, which is our safety net here in the city for vulnerable adults, for healthcare, CANHR, and the Optimizing Aging Collaborative, which is an association and collaboration of organizations that serve the elderly and based at the Division of Geriatrics. So thank you so much for listening to my introduction. We're going to watch the film now. It takes about 30 minutes. So please enjoy, and gentle potato chip enjoyment, please.
I was sitting outside. They had a bench outside, and she come and talk to me. She gave me a number to play for her, and I played it and played it and played it. It didn't come out, and I told her. She said, "Don't play it anymore." So I kept it in, and the number come out, and we split the $5,000. Yes, we split it half and half. My wife had passed away a few years before with Alzheimer's, and I've told her a lot of clothes would probably fit her. She came around to see him, and that was another bonding factor. She took some of the clothes. Yes, it was love at first sight. It was. In the mouth. First one, then the other. Up, right there. Down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. Then the next one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Your head. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Twist the ankles.
You said ankle.
Twist your ankles.
No, not twisting, my breaking it back.
Eddie Harrison and Edith Hill met after splitting a winning lotto ticket together.
Yeah, and last month they got married. But as Mola Lange tells us, some folks are already trying to tear them apart.
She's 96. He's 95. Let him be happy.
Edith's daughter, Rebecca Wright, and Rebecca's sister are Edith's co-guardians. The sister is fighting Rebecca for full custody.
She wants to sell my mother's house.
Why does that have to?
She wants the money.
If the sister wins, it could be Eddie and Edith's loss, as Edith would either have to move to Florida with the sister or be sent to a home.
She's not going to separate us, this man and me.
Not gonna separate us.
No.
We're not gonna let them.
I think it's ageism. I certainly do. And I also think it's race.
Well, you know, a civil court hearing is going to have to be held to decide who gets guardianship over either the other.
Home Rehabilitation Loan Program, City of Alexandria, Office of Housing. That doesn't sound good. I don't know if I can open it even since I'm not her guardian anymore. A third party, Jessica Nielsen, was appointed her guardian and conservator. The doctor said she had mild dementia and that she needed a power of attorney. Well, I was her power of attorney at that time. My sisters have had little relationship with my mother. I've been with my mom down through the years. They said that they didn't want Eddie because Eddie would be not giving them what they want for their inheritance that they're counting on, you know, before mom is gone. My mom and her second husband, my stepfather, bought this house in 1960. He passed away in 61. So my mom had to bear the cost of everything, including the house. She worked and did that, made that payment for all the 30 or so years that she had to make it. And of course, this is where she wants to be when she closes her eyes. And my mom has been in love with Eddie since the first day she met him. He was in love with her.
Like a little bird up there. In this picture. Little bird.
Uh-huh.
They float away now.
Uh-huh. Beautiful. Beautiful place.
Uh-huh. Here comes the bird.
There come her.
Yeah, he's take it off. Going north, I guess.
Like to be thankful
Yeah.
for, you know, be able to see and see what's out.
Yeah, another house somewhere.
Yes.
Well, it might be anything at nighttime that kind of worries you.
That's right.
Anything in the dark.
Well, put it this way, I'm so thankful to live in this world. When we came here, now we've been here a long time, and we don't know how much longer that we have. So I say we should live
Maybe
and do the best we
we're
can.
about falling in the water.
And love is one of the best
What
things.
about
that
people coming,
but love,
coming on the property
love
when you're not here?
love everybody, treat everybody right. Just one thing, treat everybody right. If you see somebody that need help, help them.
we have to honor each other. And I come here today to honor the oldest cousin in our family. And I'd like for your daughter, Rebecca, please bring them down front here so that everyone can see the newlyweds, Eddie and Edith. I say, praise the Lord. Let's sing some more. You know, people are always doing things to try to break up a marriage or hinder a marriage, and they got married. God honors marriages. And we're honoring this one here today. So we thank God for this beautiful couple. Let's stand, everybody, and give them a good clap. Edith and Eddie. And we want to thank God for Rebecca, her children, her grandchildren, everybody.
What did I love about Edith? Well, she was kind and considerate in talking to me. Not the color of the skin, but the heart. That's what we decided. Well, the heart is red, I believe.
She needed him and he needed her. So God made her and him, and he put them together.
We went to Reverend Cole while we had been going to church, and he married her. And they tried to say it's not legal. They think they'll wear us down, but they're not going to wear us down. Right. We married for life.
I was called by my lawyer and told that my sister may come and pick them up. I said, we can't separate her from Eddie. Eddie does not want to go to Florida.
He's never been on a plane, and he's saying that right now isn't the time for him to try it.
Now they don't want to take Eddie. And my sister has told me many times that her husband is abusive, abusive, abusive. I think the objective is to move mom, separate mom and Eddie and me, and sell the house. An institutional situation, to institutionalize them.
I decided you put it in God's hands, and
God bless you. Look so good. Both of y'all look so good.
Yeah, you're looking well.
Yeah, they look well. You look well. Where is Eddie?
So Eddie is right here, Mom.
Oh, well, I know, because I know that.
He's worried about Eddie.
Okay.
Where's Eddie? Yeah, where's Eddie?
Yeah, I wanted him to see how the cold had it.
Yeah.
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 I know you've been praying for us.
All right, friend.
So let us pray the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Praise God, from whom all blessings flow.
Thank you so much
And you pray
for
for
putting us together.
that everything will work out fine.
Everything will be all right.
I know you, and I know when you pray, it works.
I have trouble hearing over the phone. Who is this?
That's the guardian and conservator.
Huh?
Jessica Nielsen, she's the guardian and conservator.
Okay, then, I haven't met you before.
They want you to go to Florida.
I can't go to Florida.
We're not going to Florida with Pam. We're staying with Becky. She's taking good care of us so far.
I can't get her to go. She was abused when she was down there. Jessica, listen. It's not inaccurate. It's not inaccurate. Mama, did Rachel push you while you were there?
Yeah, he pushed me, trying to make me clean.
Did he put his hands on you and push you?
Put his hands in on the rag or something, but it when he decided he wanted to make me do some work.
I don't need any authority to be here. I'm here with my mother. And I'm not gonna leave her. No. Well, I'll step out and Patricia can take care of it. Right, no problem. Mm-hmm. She's coming with police. No, I'm not trying to resist it, but I don't want them to put their hands on my mother.
What we can do, all we can do is to go into court and try to change the order to say it's not in your mother's best interest to stay in Florida. So that's all we can do and get a hearing on that to say, look, they've separated her from her husband. They haven't given us a date certain for her coming back.
Now people are. I don't want my sister to leave, and that's all I got.
What's that?
I just said I love you. I want to keep you with me.
Old as I am at my age and everything, I don't need to be
Going up and down the road.
and I don't know what I'm. Like they've got to say something else.
But if they come into your house, they've got to have a warrant. For Pearl Harbor Day, December 7th. We're celebrating a little ahead of time.
How old is you, honey?
Your husband.
How old are you, honey?
Huh? How old am I? I'm 95.
95.
I'm 95, she's 96.
And I'm 96.
She don't want to go with the other daughter, Pam, to Florida for the reason, like I told you, they're trying to sell this house so they get the money out of it.
And would you like to go to Florida?
No, I don't want to go.
She don't want to go. I don't want her to go. Why does she want to take us to Florida?
Because it's a little vacation time while we figure out how to get you a little more appropriate care.
We don't want, she doesn't want to go and I don't want her to go.
But you know what? I have to make the decisions for her.
Well, we pray to stay in here.
So let's have a talk. All of us, let's have a talk, okay?
Can you forcibly take her out of her own home?
I can, but I don't want to.
Hey, Pam, how do you feel in your mind have to do this to your mother? You're going to get old someday like she is.
You know what? She has done everything.
How do you feel doing this to your mother?
Husband is not what you think he is. He's not the man that you think he
But
is.
you need to remember with your mind, with your memory being not so good, you are very susceptible to stories that people have told you.
Well, my memory is good, but I'm only saying I don't like the way Patricia's husband treats me.
Okay, well,
That's
let's
all.
not worry about that.
Take me, put a wash rag, a legs, something right in the hand, push
but-
me to wash windows and push
It
me.
sounds like somebody's been reading you stories of Cinderella. The arrangements have already been made. We don't want to miss the flight.
Shit, I don't want nothing. I tell them this, I don't want to go near you.
Okay,
That's
okay.
it.
But we do got to get going because we're going to miss the flight. And you want to be the kind of husband that took
When
her
will you bring her back if you take her?
about 2 weeks. About 2 weeks. And you can call her every single day on the phone and talk to her.
She lived here for all of her life to take care of this place, to raise the children.
I know. But what we got to do some things sometimes that we don't necessarily want to do, and this house just isn't working for her anymore.
I work for this.
I know you did. She
Kiss
wants to
me.
give you a kiss.
I have worked for.
I'm not doing this.
I worked all my life.
I'm not doing this. I want you to understand, I'm not doing this.
Okay. All right,
I
come on,
worked
then.
all
Let's get
my
up.
life.
Let's get up.
Well, I hope you sleep good tonight.
Eddie, you know why I'm going to sleep good?
The devils will be under your bed.
You know why? Because I'm making sure she's protected.
I don't want to hear more from you.
Did you want to come downstairs and kiss her goodbye?
You're evil.
Did you want to come downstairs?
You're
and
doing
kiss her
evil
goodbye? You
things.
did her here.
You'll never forget it.
Okay. Okay. Patricia, you're up. Make sure mom's.
You got a mother, haven't you? You remember this till your dying day. You will remember this until your dying day. I've had it in my mind for years and years. An old minister told me to make a short prayer, only 10 words. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. That's the prayer itself. I feel that I can't get up to do anything to help her. I want her home with me and where she belongs. Makes me feel with wishes of the time that we were before all this nightmare happened.
I believe when he found out that she wasn't coming back, then he gave up all hope. I've had the doctors appeal to my sister and to the guardian, Jessica Nielsen, to try to get them to get her back up here to say goodbye to her husband. And I think it's a horrible thing to have to even negotiate her coming back. It should be that something that's automatic. And with the dementia, sure, she forgets, but sometimes it's as important to forget as it is to remember. And as long as she remembers who he is and that he was her husband or is her husband, then she should be afforded an opportunity to say, goodbye, I love you. His hands cold.
Brother Eddie? Brother Eddie? Can you hear us? Brother Eddie? Can you hear us? Can you come back to us? Miss Edith wants you to come back. We want to see you all holding hands. Brother Eddie, she loves you. We love you too. Can you stay here with us? Can you?
Praise and bless this our brother.
Yes, Lord Jesus.
Even as we leave,
Yes, Jesus.
Yes, that you will keep him in your care.
Yes, Lord.
In the name of Jesus. For we know, God, that you can do everything.
Yes, Lord.
And there are no impossibilities with you.
Yes, Lord.
And so we leave him in your hands, your capable hands. Your hands of mercy, your hands of strength. In the name of Jesus, the Christ of Calvary, who died and suffered for our sins. Amen.
Amen. Oh, Jesus. Yes, Lord. Jesus. Yes, Jesus.
In Jesus' name.
Yes. Jesus.
God rest his soul.
When I take my vacation in heaven, will you take your vacation with me? Sitting down on the banks of the river, beneath the shade of a dear green tree.
I was standing by my window on one cold and cloudy day when I saw that hearse come rolling for to carry my mother away. With a circle beyond broken
Okay, while we're coming out of the movie experience, I'd like to invite my panelists to come up. Welcome, Laura. Can you hear us and see us? Or at least hear us, hopefully?
Hi.
Oh. Well, you look great. Can you hear us, Laura?
I can, yeah. Can you
Oh,
hear me?
great. Okay. I hope you heard my compliment.
Yes.
Can you see me?
I can, yes.
Okay. And can you see the panelists by any chance?
No.
Okay.
But,
Well, you have a room of people staring at you. I hope that's okay. And we just saw your wonderful film. Thank you for that.
thank you.
So Laura can see me. I'm gonna and see some of the questions. I'm gonna stand up here. I hope that's okay to our panelists. Laura, I want to, and to the crowd, I'm just going to get some questions out first to get some basics out there about some of the stuff we saw in the film from our experts and from Laura, and then we're going to open it up and we're going to have plenty of time. So thank you for your patience. But Laura, I think one of the first things I really wanted to, I found myself asking is, you have this couple and Edith is clearly very closely protected by this guardianship. How did you get access?
Great question. Can you hear me clearly?
What do people think? Can you hear her? Okay, I'm getting nods. We're going to try to turn you up, but they can hear you, yes.
Because I could hold my, I guess it looks a little awkward, but I could hold, is that better? Yes.
It's okay. Either way.
Okay. Great. So it's an interesting question because Edith had never met the guardian. The only time that Edith met the guardian was when she came that night and took her away. And so we didn't even know that she had a guardian when we first met her, and we were invited into Edith and Eddie's lives. I saw a friend texted me a photo of the couple that was circulating online after they had gotten married, and they were being called America's oldest interracial newlyweds. And I kept staring at the photo and zooming in and looking into their eyes, and I wanted to know more about them and what it would be like to find love at that time in your life. So I contacted the person that had posted the picture, who helped me connect with the family. And so Rebecca, Edith's daughter, who we get to know in the film, invited us down. And so we spent this time with them, again, just, starting out to show their love story and capture this time in their life. And we had no clue. I didn't know, I had never heard of the guardianship system at that time. So it was, a twist that we really didn't expect. And as you see, this is a love story, and it just turns out to be quite a heartbreaking one.
Indeed, yeah. There's some really tough moments. And I think I have to ask what it was like to be, or if you can say more about that scene at night. And I presume you were there. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was that like?
That was tough and devastating and quite bewildering. And also feels like really, in some ways, I mean, the only way that I think we are able to carry it in our hearts in certain ways is that it does feel like it was meant to be, or that we were meant to be there to capture this. And because, that's, audiences all over has noted that is one of the most powerful parts of the film. And it was really tough. I'm glad that, I have a journalism background, and that I sort of know that the work that we're doing is often challenging, and that that's what you sign up for, especially in documentary. If you're following people's lives as they unfold, then you don't know quite what's going to happen, and this is a really great and clear example of that. So yeah, I mean, we were shattered by what was happening, and we also just, you know that we're there to do the work that we're doing, and that we're professionals, and at the same time it's always a balance, because we do love and care about the people that, you know, we're making the film with. And so you often find yourself in just a lot of circumstances as a filmmaker that maybe wouldn't exist otherwise if you weren't there with a camera, where you're grappling with, you know, the ethics of all of this stuff, at the same time that you're there to, you know, do your work and see it through. So we did get involved behind the scenes after that. And that was also something that I hadn't, you know, as a journalist, you're taught to keep clear boundaries. And for me, it's always just been a matter of really letting my heart guide me, and just, you know, doing the best job that we possibly can, both as filmmakers as well as human beings that care about the people that we're filming.
How did you get involved?
We wound up providing so there was a number of court cases that unfolded after this, where Rebecca, Edith's daughter, was fighting to bring her mom back home. And Cher, who signed on as an executive producer towards the, you know, end of the film and had seen this couple's story on the news, and her heart leapt out the same way that mine did when I first saw their photo. So she had hired an attorney to represent Edith and her daughter and the fight to bring Edith back home. Unfortunately, there were some victories, at least on paper, where the judge ruled in favor of Cher, offered to renovate the house, pay for home health care for the rest of Edith's life, just out of the generosity and, you know, position that she's in at this point in her life. And even with that, it's like things were so crooked and twisted that they still didn't really allow her to save the day. They started making really exorbitant demands, and, you know, she got involved to help Edith, not to pay off the people on the other side of this. But anyway, through that, there was a court case that unfolded, and we actually wound up giving a snippet of the audio from that scene that you see in the dark, which showed really clearly that Edith was very lucid in what she wanted, and that was being disregarded.
Ooh, and so just to be clear, when you say Cher, you mean Cher?
I do,
like,
yes.
Okay.
Cher,
like
yes.
Cher, like Cher. Okay.
Yes.
That's really
and
remarkable.
She's wonderful. I mean, when the Flint water crisis happened, she's, you know, saw it on the news and I think sent thousands of bottles of water. So she's just in a position where she's able to give to things that she cares about. And she just so happened to see a news clip of Edith and Eddie. And so, yeah, that was something, again, unexpected and just part of the adventure.
Mm-hmm. Makes their case a little unusual, but wow. And I guess my last question before we move to everybody else would be, what are you hoping people get out of the film?
Well, you know, people from all over continue to reach out after seeing the film and say that it inspired them to go home and talk with their own families and have conversations that they haven't had before and may not have had otherwise. So I feel like that in itself is a really direct impact that is already taking place. And then we do hope, and, you know, I mean, discussions like this and the one that we're about to have, especially with the experts who are here, are just these kind of conversations that are nuanced and textured and, you know, helping to generate awareness and energy around elder rights and dignity and guardianship. All of that is making a difference and an impact in and of itself. And then we would love also, so we'd love it to make a difference and have an impact on a personal level for people and their families, as well as politically. And, we really hope that this film can spark awareness, which can help lead towards reform of the guardianship system, and just get us all thinking and feeling about letting people have autonomy and freedom in their lives, no matter what their age is or maybe what their situation is.
Thank you. That was also an excellent segue. I think we're about to learn something about guardianship, and also that I don't know how to work a microphone, I don't think. But do you know how?
Yes.
Okay. So do you mind passing it to Sarah?
Yes.
Okay. So Sarah, as I mentioned before, Sarah Hooper, and Sarah, feel free to add something, but one of the many things that she does as an elder law expert and attorney runs a practice called the Medical Legal Practice for Seniors, which is operating in more than one clinical setting and serves seniors with legal needs from a healthcare setting. So often makes that link in something that Laura was alluding to, around advanced care planning. So that's one example. But my main question for you, Sarah, right now, that I'm hoping you can help explain to the audience is, what is guardianship? Like, as an elder law expert, how do you think about it?
Yeah, and just quickly, I'd like to poll the room. How many of you have had direct experience with conservatorship in California or elsewhere? Okay, so we have some other experts in the room, and I'd love to hear about your experiences as well. So guardianship is a legal intervention, and it's initiated when somebody says, I think this older adult is impaired for some reason or another and needs assistance of some kind. And the reason I say that very vaguely is because in California, we have two types of guardianship, and in California, we actually call it conservatorship. So on the one hand, we have a type of conservatorship called LPS conservatorship, and that's for people with very significant major mental illness, Axis 1 mental illness. So think about someone who is clinically depressed and suicidal, somebody who is acutely psychotic. That's what that conservatorship process is for. It can only be initiated by a medical professional or a facility, and the main goal of that kind of conservatorship is usually inpatient mental health treatment, right? So that's not what we're talking about today, but I just wanted to raise it because lots of people use the term conservatorship, and often I find that we might be talking about different kinds, and they're very different. So the kind that we saw today is what we call probate conservatorship in California. It's meant for people with cognitive dysfunction. So think of someone with dementia who, because of their cognitive dysfunction, is not able to provide for their basic needs. And so anyone can petition for that kind of conservatorship. It can be a family member, it can be the state, it can be any interested person who thinks that this older adult needs some kind of support. And so they'll file a petition, and the court will look at all of the evidence. In San Francisco, they will have an investigator go out and actually investigate the claims and interview family members. And then the court will say, I agree with you about the level of help that this person needs, or I don't agree with you, and will either approve the conservatorship or not. So those are kind of the basic mechanisms. The main thing I want you to think about when you think about conservatorship is that it's mostly a transfer of power. So we all presumptively, under the law, have the ability to make our own decisions about a whole host of things, from healthcare decisions, financial decisions, other things, where we want to live, and who we want to marry. And so under a conservatorship, what that does is a court is looking at the evidence of your functional abilities, your cognitive abilities, and saying, do you have the ability to make those decisions anymore? And then if the answer is no, then the power to make those decisions gets transferred to another person. What conservatorship doesn't do is materialize new resources that weren't available to the person before. And I think that that's kind of a theme that I was seeing in this film, and we can maybe touch on a little bit further.
Thank you for the answer. Do you still have the right to get married?
So in California, a conservatorship does not automatically mean that you don't have the ability to get married. Usually there has to be a specific finding from the judge that you do or do not have the mental capacity to get married. And because marriage is a fundamental right in this country, we've learned that from Loving versus Virginia, the interracial marriage case, the whole line of gay marriage cases. We say this is a very fundamental right. And so as a society, we're very loath to take that right away from somebody. So you might not be good at paying your bills, you might make some bad decisions, but we're gonna give you a lot of credit and you might have a fair amount of impairment before we deny you the right to marry. But it's certainly something that a judge looking at all the facts could say is that somebody under conservatorship doesn't, in this particular case, have the mental ability to agree to a marriage.
So was their marriage legal? We don't know.
It's hard to say since I'm not an expert in Virginia law, which is where I think they got married. I read a separate article where the attorney's commentary made me think that the law in Virginia is similar to here, which is that a conservatorship doesn't automatically deny you the right to get married, but you need to get permission, meaning you need to have a capacity assessment and have a court approve the marriage before it can go forward.
I'm only asking that because I think in the scene, the thing that was really hard to watch was Eddie's objections. And he had some really choice words about the situation. And it sort of made me think, well, where are his rights, to his, now that sounds bad, but the rights to his wife, as it were, or his spouse, his spousal rights, or if there is such a thing. Okay, thank you so much. And Jill, I'm wondering, so you are the Deputy Director of the Department of Aging and Adult Services. That includes the Office of the Public Guardian. Are you willing to describe what the Public Guardian is? And then you can freeform about your thoughts about what was going on here in I think the he said, she said dynamic, a little bit of the Guardian, and then kind of her, what was going on there with how she was interpreting the objections and how that might play out in situations you've seen. Thank you.
Thanks, Anna. And first, thanks, Laura. I feel like I should turn around, but she probably can't see
She
me.
can see you,
Thank
actually.
you for your beautiful documentary. And thank you for the very comprehensive description about conservatorship. And actually, I feel like this month in particular, our department has received several requests to educate different groups on conservatorship related issues, because there's been a lot of state and local news stories that have come out around conservatorship. What has been primarily been the focus locally here in San Francisco is related to the mental health conservatorship system, the LPS system that Sarah did describe, sort of the distinct systems. And so the Office of the Public Guardian, which is the Department of Aging and Adult Services, we operate the Public Guardian, we operate the Public Conservator Program, along with a whole host of other programs that provide direct services or that provide support and funding to CBOs in the community that provide services to older people and adults with disabilities. And the primary focus of our department is to promote the health, wellness, and independence of older people and people with disabilities here in San Francisco. So looking specifically at the Office of the Public Guardian, one thing that people may not know is that we don't have any state funding here in California for the Office of the Public Guardian. And so if you happen to have contact with Public Guardian programs in other counties, you may find that they operate somewhat distinctly from each other. There is a statewide association that is somewhat in its infancy and is trying to get counties to operate with some level of consistency and to have some level of communication. But the reality is that Office of the Public Guardian operates under the probate code here in California and under court oversight. And then locally, there may be sort of local politics that may dictate to some degree how the Public Guardian operates. But for most programs in California, the Office of the Public Guardian really functions as the option of last resort for conservatorship. And I say that because the documentary may give off the idea that conservatorships happen with some level of frequency. It's actually a very rare intervention to happen. And certainly the Office of the Public Guardian, which is providing public conservatorship, is probably even more on the spectrum of last resort. In San Francisco, the vast majority of our conservatees are indigent, and many of them come to us homeless. We do have a whole separate system in San Francisco where we have private conservators, and they have to have their name on file with the probate court. So essentially what our office does is we receive referrals, and we can receive referrals from any source, but most of the referrals that we receive for probate conservatorships come from hospitals. A lot of them come from Zuckerberg. And we go out and do an investigation, is what we call it, where we are trying to determine whether conservatorship is appropriate. And from our perspective, we need to be really making sure that there are not any other options available. For those who may be social workers or who may work in a hospital setting where you see a client that may need conservatorship, but that's sort of the group consensus. One of the things to know is that as you're moving towards a conservatorship referral, it is really a requirement that you be trying out all other available options. And that's why, because when we go to court to petition for conservatorship, we have to show the judge that we have exhausted every single effort. Not everybody who has dementia, who lacks capacity, needs a conservatorship. From our perspective, we need to, the proposed conservatee needs to lack capacity, but then there also has to be a protection issue. So during our investigation process, we are investigating by talking to all collateral parties. We do receive cases from Adult Protective Services, which is also a program that is operated by the Department of Aging and Adult Services, and our APS and Public Guardian programs work very closely together. And so if we have a case that's coming to us from APS, there may be sort of a joint investigation process that's happening by the APS social worker along with our deputy conservator. During that time, one piece that's really critical is that we are looking for family members. We do exhaustive searches. We use Ancestry.com. We use LexisNexis. We are looking for anybody that might be related to this individual, and that is required by the probate code. And we have to notice families up to second degree of the proposed petition. As a general rule, we're really calling anyone who might be involved in the care of the individual, because we want to be pulling in the natural support network, and because the court always defaults to a reliable family member. So if we find family, we may find family out of state in Kansas, we have to actually contact the family and obtain a declination letter. We need to get a letter from the family that says, I am deferring to the Office of the Public Guardian in San Francisco. So that's a big part, and sometimes if you are working on a petition to our office, it may take some time, and that exhaustive search is part of it. And we're really doing that to ensure that the conservatorship is appropriate, because it's a very extreme measure. And so finally, if we've all determined that the conservatorship is appropriate, we will go to court and we make the request to the probate court. Before we go to actually and have that day in court, though, the court investigator's office is doing their own independent investigation. And that's really critical. That's really where the checks and balances come into play. The court investigator's office, it sits outside of our department, and they're staffed by social workers. And those social workers are doing their own independent investigation to really determine, is this the most appropriate intervention? And a big part of that is actually interviewing the client, the proposed conservatee, and finding out, is this, what are your wishes? Not all of our clients have the ability to really speak in a meaningful way, but if a client is able to do that, then certainly we try to take the client's interests at hand. So I could kind of go on and on. Just really quickly in terms of, would this happen here in California? Our sense is that no, this would not happen in California. We have to go to court to ask permission for just about everything. So if we wanted to sell a conservatee's home, we have to go to court specifically and ask for permission to sell the home. And we have to show why the proposed conservatee's care cannot be managed in that home. And please be mindful of the fact that the office across the state, public guardian programs do not have funding to actually manage the care of a client. Our clients tap into entitlement programs like IHSS and Medi-Cal services just like any other client does, but we don't have additional funding to pay for 24-hour home care, which is very often necessitated by for older people that lack capacity in order to keep them safe. And beyond just selling a house, we wouldn't just get permission. We would then have to actually, before we signed off on it, even bring in the offer letters that we have to show the judge that we are acting in the best interests of the conservatee. Additionally, you cannot move a conservatee out of state without getting express permission to do so. Moving someone from their home, you really would have to show why it is absolutely essential to do so. So we feel from where we sit that we have very strong judicial protections. And again, we have the court investigator's office. They go out at the time of the initial investigation. They go out annually. And additionally, if anyone were to call the court investigator's office, might be an adult protective services social worker, it might be somebody from the community, they can call and say, I am concerned about this individual. The court investigator would also go out and do another independent investigation. So from our perspective, there are judicial protections in place, not to say that abuse, neglect, exploitation can't happen. Okay, I'll stop there.
We may even, is this working? I'm worried you're learning too much. Yeah. This is a lot of information. I think the bottom line is this is a very complicated issue. But one thing that's coming up for me immediately, so I'm just wondering if anybody else is wondering, so what is Jessica doing there? She's got plenty of kids. So what's so it just says briefly that they couldn't agree. So I don't know, does anybody just want to break that down briefly? My thought was, okay, they just hired her, right, with her, but I don't know. I couldn't quite figure that out.
Well, we see it actually on the adult protective services side. These are cases that adult protective services workers investigate all the time. We're very often trying to tease out family feuds, and I see my 7 and 10-year-old boys sometimes bickering, and I wonder what it might look like when I'm in my 90s. Hopefully they're not bickering over my, my estate, whatever. Or care decisions. But that's really what happens. These kids grow up and they bicker, they fight, and it may be around the house, it may be around the care. And a lot of times there's some real painful emotions that are actually part of that too. And it comes out of some family dysfunction very often and family issues that were not resolved. But the court very often, when they cannot determine who is the reliable child here, they may appoint someone independent. They may appoint the public guardian, or they may appoint a private conservator, which is what my assumption is that happened here.
Thank you so much. Do you want to say something, Sarah, to add?
Yeah, I have two thoughts, and my knowledge that extends beyond this case comes from a news article I read, so I can't validate the reliability of that, but from my understanding of what was happening in this case is that at a certain point, 2 of the daughters were co-guardians, and they couldn't agree, and they kept transferring her around the state and across state lines, and it was because the co-guardianship failed that a separate guardian was appointed. So that's why this Jessica Nielsen woman, who she never met, came into the picture and had authority. So I think my understanding is that your office doesn't like to do co-guardians for that exact reason. That's a problem, right? If you have family members who have fundamentally different ideas about risk assessment and values and what's the appropriate balance of self-determination and protection, these are really hard things for all of us to figure out, and we all have different assessments of what the appropriate balance is. And then I just want to raise again this issue of resources because we work with very low income individuals. My understanding was that one of the main issues with the house she was living in is that there was one bathroom and it was upstairs, and she had a very hard time getting upstairs. And so the court was very concerned about her ability to stay in this house. So we don't all have share to swoop in and, you know, make modifications in our home, but those kind of resource issues, like making a home a safe place for an older adult to live, you know, as Jill said, that's not, conservators just get power. They don't necessarily get resources. And usually always the resources you're drawing on are the ones in the older adult estate. So it's whatever access to resources they had that you can have to help support that person, and really no more. So there are enormous disparities issues in aging, right? So those of us aging in poverty don't have as many options as those of us who are friends with Cher.
Which, you know, sounds like she had very good intentions. And Laura, I saw you nodding your head that was the co-guardian thing was a problem. Is that right?
Yeah, it was. And, you know, it makes you, I mean, I think of the very broad picture here is that it's really tough for most of us to deal with, you know, end of life and aging issues, even when there are resources and when there is a close-knit family that all is on the same page. But if you bring in, you know, family dysfunction, a long family history of, you know, all sorts of messes, and then the court system, you know, just all of these things on top of each other, it's like, it's really hard even when everyone's close and on the same page, and to know what is best for someone. And so, yeah, I mean, when you said it's complicated, I think that's really, really true. And, you know, yeah, I mean, well, I'll let you guys continue.
Well, I think I have a feeling Tony has something to add. Tony Chicotel is from California Advocates for Nursing Home Reform and a lawyer and also a tremendous advocate for older adults who may find themselves in this situation. I'm guessing you have some thoughts.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to let you have them because
Okay.
I know they're good thoughts.
Thank you. So I'm a pretty mellow guy most of the time, but I'm kind of a professional angry person. I'm an advocate, so people tell me their stories and I get upset and I try to fix those problems. I'm glad Sarah brought up the bathroom thing because that was my reading too, that this all really comes down to the failure to have a bathroom downstairs. Anybody ever had a loved one in hospice? They're dying at home. They can't get to the bathroom. What's one of the first pieces of medical equipment that's delivered from the hospice company? A commode, right? My goodness. And when I was reading that Washington Post article, it sort of tries to rebut a little bit of the information that's in the film. I thought really this all comes down to the failure of someone to think about a $30 commode. So I'm much more cynical about the California system than maybe Jill is. I think that conservatorships are often granted when they're not necessary. I think the California system is way too weighted. It's weighted on the side of having a binary system where either you have full capacity and off you go make all your own decisions, or you have no capacity and virtually every decision is taken away. And there's no middle ground. It doesn't recognize the reality of disease and capacity among older adults or people with disabilities. So we have this sort of winner-take-all system, and oftentimes the preferences or the concerns of the conservatee or the proposed conservatee are just left behind. And I've been in court so many times seeing the quote work of conservatorship defense attorneys where their conservatee client is saying, I don't want to be conserved, if the conservatee even makes it to the courtroom. Because that's a right that is often waived by their counsel. But if they're in court and they're saying, I don't want to be conserved, and their attorney standing right there next to them, conservatee has a right to a jury trial in California. They never go to trial. They just sort of let this process take its place. And And I've heard the conservatorship system, there's a famous quote that it's the equivalent of dying a civil death. That's true. Virtually all of your decision-making power is taken away. There's a couple things that are held in reserve, but what I've advocated for, and other states have, is a system where you start from 0 powers for the conservator, and the court has to draw from the menu of powers available, rather than just giving everything over and maybe retaining a few things for the conservatee. So we have this system that's set up to really move in a direction of granting conservatorships. I think there's a significant number, I don't think it's a majority of the cases, but I think there's a significant number of false positives. I tell people all the time, a judge is not going to make the papers or the internet for having granted a conservatorship that would be protective for somebody. But they would make the papers or the internet for not granting one and the person goes out and something horrible happens. So I think that just the court system in general is set up to be very conservative. The judge, the court investigator's office, the conservator, the conservator's attorney are all charged with telling or inputting into the system what's in the best interests of this person. There's only one person in the system that's charged with advocating for what this person actually wants, and that's the conservatee's attorney. And in most counties, that's an appointed position for someone who also makes most of their living representing conservators. Could you imagine the criminal court system having attorneys who prosecute and defend cases at the same time? It's a very poorly constructed system in a number of ways. I think that for the most part, they get it right most of the time, but there's significant deficiencies. So I could absolutely see something like this happening in California. And it sounded like there was court approval on all this stuff for her to go back to Florida. To me, the system should be set up so that whatever Edith or whatever conservatee is in position to talk, whatever they says goes. And that's the presumptive right answer. And then if we're going to do something different, then we have to have a high level of evidence that says that that's just absolutely ridiculous. I don't think that was the case here. And I don't think that's the case in a lot of conservatorship cases in California.
Yeah, and if I could just add that we have followed a number of cases in California and all across the country. When I, came upon this story and we witnessed what happens with Edith and Eddie, I thought that it was just one crooked situation in a small town in Virginia. And then through research and connecting with people across the country, found out that this is happening at really alarming levels. And because there isn't any oversight, it just has created what feels like a feeding ground for exploitation. We've heard, different people who are doing good work, like, yourselves have often said at screenings in the audience, oh, this wouldn't happen here in this state. And unfortunately, we've, again, just heard horror stories from all over the country.
I'll just briefly add, because we only have a few more minutes, that there are some other media articles about this issue. One was a New Yorker story in October that there got a lot of traction, by Rachel Aviv, called How Elderly Lose Their Rights, I believe. And then there was a counterpiece to your documentary by Laura Graham in the Washington Post about, she did further interviews with the other side of the family. So if you want to read that, and they're both available online. And we have a question from the audience here. Okay, I don't know if everybody heard that. So if you're competent now, write down what you want, make that legal. So how would somebody do that? Sounds like a preventive measure you're recommending to get your affairs in order before something like this may or may not happen to you. So do you guys have recommendations about that?
So the advance directive is a very necessary and important piece of it, but it's not sufficient when you think about the amount of resources that are needed to actually provide for someone's care and help them meet their goals. So you also need financial instruments in place. So for most people, that will be a durable power of attorney for finances, which you really should not approach in a boilerplate way, but get good advice and think very carefully about who you're appointing and how you're setting that up, because it's an enormous power that is more easily abused than conservatorship, because with a POA, there's no court at all in the picture. So a very necessary document in dementia, but not one to be taken lightly. For people who might need to rely on Medi-Cal for long-term care, there are considerations in filling out the document. So you want to get good legal advice and be thinking ahead to that. Not everyone needs a living trust, but some people do. And so that usually depends on what kind of assets you have. But a living trust is another mechanism for having a plan in place to manage your documents during your lifetime, or manage your money and property during your lifetime. For people who haven't planned ahead, conservatorship is one mechanism. For people who rely on Social Security, a rep payee may also be needed, and a VA fiduciary if you receive veterans benefits. So there's kind of an array of legal instruments around financial decision making, and it's important for caregivers to understand what each of those are and the scope of the authority that they hold under those. And for if you're the older adult giving someone those authorities, you want to know what those are ahead of time.
Other questions?
I have two quick comments and then a question. One is, I'd like to thank the filmmaker for this, probably one of the most compelling short documentaries I've seen in a long time. And yet, it was one of the most disturbing things I've seen in a long time. My second comment is, I'm glad I only have one child with whom I have a great relationship. And then my question is how is it possible for that guardian to have not met with the couple and not considered any of their needs, and yet just pull this all off without any kind of consent from anyone?
Laura, did you hear that? Or
No,
I'm going to
I'm
have
sorry.
to Oprah and Ellen this. Okay. But as gentleman just commented, like, how is it possible that the guardian didn't meet Edith and Eddie? Like, how is it possible this guardian that was her role, and yet she hadn't met them yet? Because your film pointed that out. So, experts, is it possible?
It's obviously possible. It happened. I think it could happen here that same way. I can't imagine a professional fiduciary conservator worth their salt actually doing that, but I guess it's possible. She was an attorney too, which kind of struck me. So she probably helps clients get guardianship, or so she's part of that process. And that's probably one of the reasons why the court appointed her, is because they're comfortable with her. And I'll tell you, I've seen it, the families fight and they go to a neutral third party like a public guardian or a professional fiduciary. And I'll tell you that at least part of the it's not the sole motivation, not that cynical, but part of the motivation is it saves the court time and effort and energy and overseeing the decisions that are going to be made. We know that you're going to do, we have trust in you that you're going to do the right thing, rather than this bickering family and they're going to continually come into court. It's almost palpable in some courtrooms, conservatorship, they're deciding whether this person will be treated as an adult or a child for the rest of their life. And the hearings, when they start to go over 10, 15 minutes, in some courts, you can feel the judge getting antsy and impatient with what's going on. So I think it could happen here. And I've had cases myself directly with conservative clients where the conservator is making decisions without consulting with their clients. That's pretty common in my experience, and without seeing them very often at all. But then some conservatorship, some of the criticisms of conservatorship is that the conservators charge whenever they go visit the client. So in some cases they might have a disincentive to visit because they're afraid of being criticized for charging for that. There's famous examples of conservators charging for going to the funeral of their conservatees.
Yikes. Did you have a comment, Laura?
Yeah. If I could just just add a quick comment that, you know, this, how could this happen and how could this be, was a question that we were continually raising ourselves as this unfolded. And again, as we learned about different family stories all over. And I realized at a certain point that we were asking honest questions about dishonest situations. And so, you know, we were hoping that there's justice in the justice system, but there was not in this case. And so it's like, you know, I kept banging my head against the wall trying to figure it out until I sort of realized the playing ground that we were on.
I see some other hands. This is my boss, so I'm gonna give her the microphone.
I just had a quick question as a geriatrician. Did Edith have a doctor? Because I know when people are doing conservatorship, usually there's a long form that you have to fill out, and usually it has to be, you have to be pretty severe, at least like my experience in conservatorship. So I just was curious, like, was anybody involved on the medical side?
She did have a doctor, and Rebecca, who is a very, you know, her daughter, who we get to know well in the film, is a very holistic woman. Also had them in physical therapy, and, you know, we saw them exercising together, and we would see that quite often. And they were living a really active life. I believe that that is part of what frightened the other daughter, Patricia, as well as the guardian, and that this is my understanding of why guardians and conservators often lean towards institutionalization, because they are looking to protect or for the person to be safe. And I think that the meaning locked in a room, often on medication. And I think, again, this brings up just a lot of issues. It brings up conversation around freedom and autonomy, and is it better for someone to be out dancing at night and falling in love, you know, until the wheels fall off, or for them to be in a bed in a vegetable state, right? And one person might see it one way and one person might see it another way. And the doctor, there was one doctor, according to Rebecca, there was only one doctor who weighed in on the record, who was hired by, I believe, Patricia and or the guardian, who stated that, you know, Edith had dementia with regards to this case. So, and from, you know, people that we've spoken to who, again, specialize in dementia and different things, it's like we've learned a lot about how a lot of times there's a box that is checked off. So when someone has dementia, then it's just, they check off that box, and then in certain ways they might be treated like their life is over. But that this is a really broad spectrum, and it's a really nuanced thing. And sure, maybe Edith needed help with certain things. She also was really clear on, you know, how she felt and what she wanted, and that she wanted to be with Eddie. And why not, you know, why not allow everyone to be in love whenever they want and with whomever they choose?
I almost want to leave it there, but I'm going to consciously run over 5 minutes so we can get one more question in. And Laura, just so you know, our form in California is so confusing, doctors can't even figure out how to fill it out. So it's not one box, it's unfortunately many boxes. I've seen your hand up a couple times.
Yeah, but I think that is a good thing.
Oh, okay, all right. All right, so we'll end there. I just want to thank everybody for coming. Our program has some resources to learn more and also to spread the word. And I just have to thank our panelists, whom I admire so deeply for their advocacy, and Laura for your film. Thank you so much.
Thank you.